I'll provide a complete paraphrase of the entire story here in the chat, maintaining the length, meaning, and English language. She was cleaning the main entrance floor when the company's top executive overheard her conversing in Mandarin, Spanish, and French with native-level fluency. What followed left the entire organization stunned. The custodial staff at Hallberg International typically remained invisible to most employees, not due to deliberate disrespect, but simply through routine indifference. They arrived after business hours, wheeling their equipment, emptying waste containers, sanitizing meeting rooms, becoming as unnoticeable as background noise. On a Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, the corporate headquarters entrance area hummed with the sounds of footsteps echoing off tiles, employees texting on devices, discussing project deadlines, and gripping their morning coffee as if it contained life solutions. Jonathan Kellerman, the organization's chief executive, was midway through his journey from the parking structure to his executive suite on the 18th floor when he detected something unusual. A voice speaking fluently in a language he recognized from his recent business trip to their Shanghai branch office, Mandarin. The sound made him freeze, not because hearing Mandarin was surprising, but because of the speaker's identity. He looked around, expecting to see one of their international business representatives who had arrived early, but instead noticed her. A woman dressed in a maroon maintenance uniform, her short braided hair secured in a ponytail, positioned near the electronic building directory. She was engaged in conversation with an elderly gentleman wearing a dark blue coat and thick glasses who appeared both puzzled and grateful. She gestured calmly, her tone both gentle and confident, guiding him toward the elevator bank. Kellerman squinted. He had encountered her previously, moving through the corridors after extended meetings, consistently courteous, perpetually silent, never establishing eye contact unless addressed directly. He was unaware of her identity, yet here she stood, effortlessly interpreting and explaining building navigation in a language most Americans struggled to pronounce accurately. He moved closer cautiously. As he approached, she concluded the Mandarin discussion and addressed a delivery person clutching a clipboard. She spoke smoothly, transitioning into Spanish. The delivery worker responded, "Sí, gracias." Then, with equal ease, she turned to a nearby supplier examining incorrectly labeled packages. She instructed him in French, indicating with a subtle smile. Kellerman's expression tensed slightly, not from irritation but from something deeper, a sharp pang of remorse. He had spent over 20 years in international logistics, spearheaded global expansions, contracted interpreters, and developed cross-cultural education programs. Yet here, within his own facility, the most linguistically talented individual he had encountered in months had been maintaining restrooms 2 floors beneath his office. He approached, driven more by curiosity than authority. "Pardon me?" She turned toward him, surprised but composed. "Yes, sir." He offered a faint smile. "That was Mandarin, correct?" "Yes, sir." "You speak it fluently?" "Yes, and Spanish, French." She confirmed with a nod. "Also Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I can read Latin, though I don't typically include that." He stared in disbelief. "You're informing me that you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." Her tone contained no boastfulness, no arrogance, merely honesty. Direct as a measuring tool, he gazed at her momentarily, attempting to process that a maintenance worker in his building, a woman who silently mopped floors nightly, was essentially a walking international interpreter. "What's your name?" he inquired finally. "Denise Atwater." "Ms. Atwater, do you have a few minutes available?" Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "Right now?" "Yes, I'd appreciate speaking with you in my office." He observed her hesitation. Not exactly fear, but that instinctive response people develop when they're accustomed to being overlooked or undervalued. She gradually nodded. "Very well." He pressed the elevator call button, holding the door as she entered. Inside the lift, quiet settled momentarily. "I've been employed here for 13 years, she mentioned suddenly as they ascended toward the executive level. He faced her, Never imagined I'd receive an invitation upstairs. He gave a small, quiet smile. You might be amazed how rapidly circumstances can shift. Though he had no concept of just how dramatically everything was about to change, neither for her nor for himself. The elevator chimed. Denise exited first, her footsteps silent on the polished hardwood flooring of the executive corridor. The area smelled of citrus and leather. Wealth, if you needed to assign a fragrance to it. Kellerman's secretary glanced up, astonished at seeing Denise accompanying him. He offered no explanation, simply gestured for them to proceed. Once inside the glass-enclosed office, he indicated a chair opposite his desk. Please be seated. She sat, carefully placing her hands in her lap, eyes slowly scanning the room. She wasn't impressed, merely observant. A large world map decorated the wall behind him, each nation marked with colored pins. On the side table sat a tray of espresso cups, a photograph of his 2 daughters, and a dusty award from a trade conference in Brussels. Kellerman positioned himself across from her, leaning forward slightly. So, Denise, I'll be direct. I didn't anticipate having this discussion today. She acknowledged with a small nod, her posture still, her expression neutral. However, I just witnessed you speak 3 languages as if you were operating light switches, and I need to comprehend how someone with your abilities ends up working here maintaining floors? For a moment, she remained silent. Her gaze shifted toward the window, then returned to him. Do you have time for the complete truth? I wouldn't have inquired otherwise. She exhaled. All right then. She rubbed her palms together as if preparing the words. I was born in Toledo, Ohio, an only child. My father worked as a pipe fitter, my mother as a nursing assistant. They didn't possess much, but they worked diligently, promoted education like it was sacred. I received a full scholarship to Kent State, studied linguistics, was partway through a master's degree when my mother became ill. She paused. I returned home to care for her, then my father died from a stroke 6 months later. Everything collapsed. Following that, she tilted her head slightly as if rewinding the memories before voicing them. I had a child, no financial resources, no partner who remained, so I accepted whatever employment I could locate. Supermarkets, care facilities, temporary positions. Eventually, a custodial supervisor here offered me overnight hours. It allowed me to collect my daughter from school and pay the utility bills. That's how I arrived here. Kellerman observed her, unblinking, simply listening. But the languages I never stopped learning. I borrowed textbooks, listened to recordings, and read newspapers in 5 different languages just to maintain my skills. It's what I do. It's the only activity that makes me feel like I still have value. Her voice remained steady. It wasn't practiced or flowery, just straightforward. Most people never inquired. She added. They observed the uniform and assumed. That final word lingered in the atmosphere. Assumed. Kellerman reclined in his chair, the impact of her narrative settling into his chest like a weight. She cleared her throat. Listen, Mr. Kellerman, I'm not sharing this to make anyone feel guilty. I'm not resentful. Life occurred. I did what was necessary. I continue to do so. But you asked, and that's the response. He released a slow breath. Denise Atwater was brilliant. That much was clear now. But she wasn't seeking sympathy or even assistance. She was providing the truth, clean, clear, and somewhat heartbreaking. Do you ever consider doing something different? He asked. She gave a small shrug. Sometimes, but it's difficult to dream when your rent is overdue. Silence returned, but it was different now, heavier, filled with something unspoken yet powerful. Kellerman reached for his notepad and wrote several lines. What are you writing? She asked, her voice still calm but slightly curious now. He looked up at her. Ideas. But one particular idea was already forming in his mind, and it wasn't small. The conversation remained with him throughout the day, even during budget reviews and vendor calls. Jonathan Kellerman's thoughts kept returning to that morning, to Denise Atwater, her composed voice, and the quiet manner in which she'd listed 9 languages as if they were trivial. That level of fluency didn't simply occur. It required years of discipline, curiosity, and passion. Around 3:45 p.m., he left the executive floor and took the elevator down to the building's service level. He wanted to witness something for himself down there. The air was warmer, the walls were off-white, marked from carts and boots. He passed maintenance crews, break rooms, stacks of bottled water, and finally reached the janitorial supply closet. He spotted Denise through the open doorway, restocking microfiber cleaning cloths on a metal shelf. "Mind if I interrupt you again?" he asked, entering. She turned slightly, startled. "You came down here?" He smiled. "Couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. Listen, I have a request." She wiped her hands on her shirt. "What type of request?" "There's a meeting upstairs. A group from the Sao Paulo office arrived early, and our interpreter canceled at the last moment. Can you assist?" She hesitated for only a moment. "Portuguese?" "Yes, can handle that." Minutes later, they were in conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives sat uncomfortably, checking their devices. Denise entered, quietly nodded, and began speaking in smooth, confident Portuguese. Kellerman watched as the entire room transformed. Shoulders relaxed, eye contact intensified. She wasn't merely interpreting. She was building bridges, making people feel acknowledged. When one of the visitors made a joke in Portuguese, Denise responded with laughter and a return joke that had them all chuckling. Kellerman didn't comprehend a word, but he understood connection. After 20 minutes, the meeting concluded. One of the executives approached him and said in English, "She's superior to anyone we've worked with this year. Where did you discover her?" Kellerman looked at Denise, who was already collecting empty cups on a tray. "Right here," he said. Back in the hallway, he caught up with her. "Have you ever done professional interpretation before?" She shook her head. "Just assisted people in hospitals, government offices, situations like that. No certification, no time for school. My daughter needed me more." Kellerman nodded. "And where is she now?" "She's 26, a nurse in Tempe, paid for her education herself, stubborn like her mother." They both smiled, and for a moment, it didn't feel like CEO and janitor, just 2 people discussing life. They returned to the service level where Denise clocked back in. She had 2 more floors to clean before shift change, but before she departed, she said something that stayed with him. "I didn't do anything exceptional today." He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it appeared to me." She gave him a small smile and walked away. That night, Kellerman sat in his car for an extended time before driving home. He thought about everything: the pressure to expand the company, the investor meetings, the endless discussions about diversity and untapped talent. All this time, they'd been looking externally, recruiting globally, searching for fresh blood. But sometimes, the treasure's already in your own backyard. And once you recognize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Denise's badge beeped at an unusual time. She had just finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, tapped her on the shoulder with an expression that wasn't exactly annoyed but wasn't normal either. "Hey, Denise, Mr. Kellerman requested to see you again." She blinked. "Did I make an error?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't specify, just told me to send you up." She cleaned her hands on a towel and followed the same route she'd taken the previous day. Only this time, everyone in the building seemed to notice her. People she passed looked up, some whispered. One of the receptionists even gave her a polite smile, as if she knew something Denise didn't. When she walked into the executive suite, Kellerman stood near the window, sipping black coffee and gazing out at the skyline. "Come in," he said, not turning around yet. She stood quietly by the door until he faced her. "I've been contemplating," he said, placing his mug on a coaster, "about wasted talent. How many people never get an opportunity, not because they're not capable, but because nobody looks twice." Denise said nothing. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd witnessed too many people talk extensively and do little. I want to establish a new position, he continued, one that didn't exist previously. Something this company desperately needs, even if we didn't realize it until now. She furrowed her brow. For what? Cultural liaison for international affairs. Someone who can speak the languages, read between the lines, handle visitors, vendors, documents, all the global touchpoints that we're constantly mishandling. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. You're qualified, probably more than most of the people in our leadership team, honestly, and you've already demonstrated you can handle it with grace, patience, and intelligence. She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. Is this genuine? As genuine as it gets. I don't possess a college degree. You have something superior, lived experience, commitment, and fluency in 9 languages. Do you think I care about a piece of paper? She shifted her weight, still uncertain. Why me? He looked directly at her. Because I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9 o'clock yesterday morning. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you. People doing twice the work for half the recognition. Denise crossed her arms. You know what people are going to say? I don't care. She stared at him for a long moment, then released a slow breath. I've never held an office position, she said. Never had a title. You'll learn quickly. I don't have a wardrobe for this type of work. I'll have HR arrange a clothing allowance. She gave a dry chuckle. You've considered everything, haven't you? I'm attempting to. A long pause stretched between them. Then Denise asked softly, what about my shift downstairs? Who takes my place? Kellerman smiled. We'll find someone, but no one can replace you for a considerable time. Neither of them spoke. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. You're certain this isn't some kind of favor? He shook his head. This is overdue recognition. She bit her lip, eyes glistening, but she blinked the tears away before they fell. All right then, she said, voice firm. Let's see what I can accomplish. He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake, it was history being rewritten. But what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Denise Atwater, the janitor from the night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level position. Nobody knew the complete story, just whispers that she spoke multiple languages, that the CEO himself had chosen her, that she might have some kind of secret background, perhaps government work, maybe even undercover. The gossip bounced from cubicle to conference room. Some folks were curious, some smiled and said, good for her, but not everyone was applauding. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants leaned close over their salads. I'm just saying, one whispered, I have a master's in international business and I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This woman was scrubbing toilets last week. Her friend shrugged. Maybe she knows something we don't. Others suggested Kellerman was trying to appear progressive, check a diversity box. That same energy trickled into boardrooms and private messages. Quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't accustomed to upward mobility coming from outside the traditional ladder. Denise felt it the moment she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. It was modest, just a desk, a plant, and a computer she hadn't used yet, but to her, it looked like another world. When HR finished her orientation, she asked if she could keep the janitor uniform, not to wear, just to remind herself. That afternoon, she met with Victor, head of international operations. He walked in with a clipboard and stern eyes. He didn't shake her hand, didn't sit. So you're the new liaison, he said, as if it was a joke wrapped in politeness. Denise looked up. That's what I'm told. Do you have experience in corporate environments? She smiled. Only from the outside looking in. He didn't laugh. I've got reports from Italy, contracts from our Dubai partners, and an entire vendor issue in Sao Paulo. Think you can manage that? She stood up. I'll need a few hours to review, but yes. Victor dropped the folder on her desk and walked out. Later that night, Kellerman stopped by her office. "How's day one?" She exhaled and leaned back in her chair. "I've had worse." He smiled. "Victor give you trouble?" "He doesn't intimidate me," she replied. She paused, then added, "But can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus," and continued on. He leaned against the door frame. "Because I saw myself in you." She raised an eyebrow. "You were a janitor?" "No, but I was overlooked frequently. I came from nothing. My father repaired cars in a town no one visits. I worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this." Denise nodded slowly. "Now you're the one deciding who gets in." He nodded back. "Exactly." There was a beat of silence before Denise looked down at the file on her desk. "I'll be honest, I'm nervous." "Good. Means you care," he replied. She looked up again. "There are going to be people who resent this. They'll adjust or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." Kellerman stood straight. "You have a story, Denise, a genuine one. And now you've got a platform." Then he turned to leave. As the door clicked behind him, Denise looked around her office. She remembered the years she'd cried in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks, the nights she came home with aching feet and barely enough energy to heat soup, the birthdays she missed, the promotions she watched go to people who never even said good morning. She opened her desk drawer and placed the old janitor badge inside, not to forget, but to remember exactly what it took to get here. But this story wasn't just hers anymore, and the spotlight was about to grow much brighter. By the end of the week, Denise's nameplate was mounted outside her office. Black letters on brushed steel: Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs. It looked official, clean, permanent. Word had gotten out. Officially, this time, the company-wide email hit inboxes Friday morning, sent by Kellerman himself. It was brief, clear, and carried weight. He explained her role, her background, and more importantly, her value. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the best person for the job, period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers grumbled under their breath. Others warmed up once they saw her in action. She navigated conversations with foreign clients better than the software. She corrected mistranslations in old contracts that had cost them money for years, and she never showed off. She just worked quietly, smoothly, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, Denise was asked to join a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's North African expansion had been stalled for months over miscommunication and mistrust. She walked into the room in a soft beige blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room changed. You could feel it. The shift was palpable. People leaned in. They listened because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached her privately. He touched his chest gently, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one's ever done that for us," he said. "Not in our language, not like that." Denise nodded. "You matter, that's all." By midweek, Kellerman made another move. He renamed the company's main training room, where all new hires gathered for orientation and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The plaque outside the door was removed. In its place, the Atwater Room. No big announcement, no celebration, just a quiet sign and a shift that meant more than flowers or cake ever could. Later that afternoon, Kellerman stood outside the room, watching as a new group of interns filed in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who's Atwater?" A senior staff member answered, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come wearing a suit." That same day, Denise found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note. It read, "I used to think I'd be invisible forever, but today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching, people who needed to see what was possible. Denise sat there, staring at the words, her throat tightening. She didn't cry. She didn't need to because that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a job. It was a door. But not every door stays open without a fight, and someone was already planning to push back. The backlash didn't take long to surface. Late Thursday, Denise was called into a meeting, not by Kellerman, but by someone higher up, Eleanor Craig, a senior board member who'd flown in from Dallas. She'd been with the company since the 90s, sharp suits, sharper tongue. Denise walked into the small conference room on the 17th floor. Eleanor waited with a stack of papers and a flat stare. "Have a seat," she said without looking up. Denise sat. Eleanor tapped her pen twice. "So, Ms. Atwater, I've reviewed your file. You have no college degree, no previous corporate training, and no management certifications." Denise didn't flinch. "That's correct." Eleanor folded her hands. "You were a janitor here 3 weeks ago." "I was." She leaned back in her chair. "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Denise held her gaze. "Because I speak the languages, I understand the cultures. I've already fixed 2 vendor contracts and cleared a 3-month delay in our Morocco deal. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners that legal is finalizing next week." Eleanor pursed her lips. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" Denise smiled slightly. "No, ma'am. I think it should be run on results." Eleanor blinked. That was the first time Denise had seen her hesitate. "I don't need to be liked," Denise added, "but I do need to be useful, and I am." Eleanor stood and slowly closed the folder. "You're a gamble." "I'm used to that," Denise said quietly. "My entire life's been one." When the meeting ended, Denise didn't return to her office right away. She walked out of the building and sat on a bench across the street, staring at the glass tower she now worked in. For so many years, she had walked past that building wearing the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now they all did, and some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. "Hey, Ma," her daughter answered. "Everything okay?" Denise hesitated, then nodded to herself. "Yeah, just needed to hear your voice." "You sure?" "I'm sure." They talked for a few minutes, mostly about nothing. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a new movie she wanted to watch, but just hearing her laugh steadied Denise. After they hung up, she sat in silence. Then she stood up, walked back across the street, and rode the elevator to her floor. By the next morning, word of the Eleanor Craig meeting had somehow spread, and to everyone's surprise, Denise didn't back down. She showed up early, spoke at a team meeting, and took a call with the German office without needing a translator, calm, sharp, unbothered. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." No name, just 3 words that meant the world. In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. People started coming to her, not just for translation but for advice, guidance, and confidence. She became the person people went to before they pitched an idea. She'd sit with interns and give them tips before big presentations, and she never talked down to anyone. One of the interns, a shy Vietnamese kid named Bao, asked her, "How did you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "1 word at a time, same way you will." Denise wasn't just doing her job. She was changing the culture. One afternoon, Kellerman joined her for coffee in the break room. "Been hearing good things," he said. She sipped from her cup. "Been trying to ignore the bad ones. You're making waves." She looked at him. "Is that a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here, it means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment. "You know," he added, "I've been thinking about starting a training program for internal talent, especially folks working non-traditional roles. There's probably more Denises in this building." She nodded. "There are. They just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled. "Already started planning it in my head." By month's end, the pilot program launched. A new initiative called Voices Within, designed to give workers across departments access to language training, leadership mentoring, and visibility across divisions. It was Denise's concept, and it caught fire. Eventually, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Cincinnati, where she told her story not as a motivational tale but as a reality check. "I was never just a janitor," she said to the crowd. "I was fluent, I was capable, I was ready, but nobody ever looked long enough to see it." So the next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you really missing? The room was silent, and then it rose in full applause. On her way out, a young man approached her with tears in his eyes. "My mom's a housekeeper," he said, "and she speaks 5 languages. I used to be embarrassed to say that." Denise touched his arm. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than she ever had in her life, not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit the role. She'd brought herself, every layer of her story with her, and that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code, intelligence doesn't need permission, and brilliance can walk past you wearing a name tag and holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you, and when they do, don't be afraid to take that seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you. 2 more chairs with you. 2 more chairs with you.